Sylvester Stallone, known to the world as Rocky and Rambo, sat in his old 1998 Ford pickup truck in the parking lot of Brewhaven, a cafe in the suburbs of Philadelphia. It was a cool morning on April 8, 2025, and a light fog hung over the asphalt, mingling with the scent of freshly brewed coffee drifting from the cafe's open doors. He was 78, but still kept himself in shape. Broad shoulders, strong arms, though the wrinkles on his face told of years of struggle, both in the ring and out of it. A small silver cross hung around his neck, a gift from his mother, which he hadn't taken off since the filming of Rocky in 1976. The cross was more than just an ornament. It was a talisman, a reminder of faith and endurance. Sly, as his friends called him, had recently been avoiding the noisy Hollywood parties and trendy restaurants of Los Angeles. He had returned to Pennsylvania, where he grew up, to find some peace and feel like an ordinary man again, not an icon. Brewhaven was one of those small cafes that reminded him of the good old days, the worn wooden facade, the faded sign, and the scent of cinnamon filling the air. He could hear the buzz of conversations inside about taxes, elections, how everything in the country was going downhill. For people 55 and older, it was a place of real life, where you could complain about the government over a $2 black coffee. He got out of the truck, tossing his worn denim jacket over his shoulder. The cross glinted in the sunlight as Sly adjusted his collar. His plan was simple: grab an espresso, sit by the window, and watch the world wake up. But as soon as he stepped to the door, a young woman, about 25 years old, a barista with a name tag that read Emily, appeared in front of him. Her blonde hair was tied in a messy ponytail, and her face showed a mix of awkwardness and determination. "Sorry, sir, but you can't come in," she said, blocking the entrance. Her voice trembled, but her tone was firm. Sly stopped, furrowing his brow. He wasn't the type to explode with anger right away, but the situation confused him. "What do you mean?" he asked in his low, gravelly voice, the one millions of people would recognize from the first word. "I just want a coffee." Emily swallowed, her fingers nervously gripping the edge of her apron. "It's because of your cross," she said quietly, nodding towards his neck. "We have a policy here, no religious symbols. We don't want to offend anyone." Sly froze. He slowly looked down at his cross, then back up at Emily. Behind her at the counter stood a man in his 40s, thin, with a sharp chin and cold gray eyes. His name tag read Derek, manager. He was watching the scene, arms crossed, with a barely noticeable smile, as if waiting for Sly to start a scene. "You're kidding, right?" Sly smiled, but a spark flashed in his eyes. "It's just a cross. I've been wearing it for 50 years. It doesn't hurt anyone." Emily looked away, her cheeks reddening. "I didn't make the rules. They're just the policy. Derek says we have to stay neutral. We have all kinds of people here, and someone might, well, feel uncomfortable." Sly turned his gaze to Derek. He stepped forward, his voice sharp like a blade. "She's right. This is a private establishment, and we decide who can come in. If you don't like it, go somewhere else." A hush fell over the cafe. The people at the tables, mostly retirees sipping coffee and flipping through newspapers, started turning to look. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" An older man in a plaid shirt muttered, "This is ridiculous." The smell of coffee mixed with the tension in the air, and the clink of spoons against cups grew louder in the silence. Sly felt that familiar warmth rise in his chest, the same feeling that had driven him through 12 rounds in Rocky. But he wasn't that young fighter rushing into attack anymore. Life had taught him something else. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool spring air fill his lungs, and calmly said, "I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to understand. Did someone complain about my cross? Or is this just your idea, Derek?" Derek scowled, his confidence cracking. "It's none of your business why we're doing this. Rules are rules." "What if I say it is my business?" Sly stepped closer, his voice steady, but a steel edge crept into it. "I grew up here. In this town, people respected each other, whether they believed or not. What changed?" Emily stepped back, her eyes darting between Sly and Derek. Derek, however, didn't back down. The world changed, old man. If you can't accept that, that's your problem. The word old man hit like a slap. Sly felt the muscles in his neck tense, but he just smiled, the same crooked grin the camera captured in Rambo. He could have put Derek on the floor in one move, but what would that solve? Instead, he turned to the people in the room. "And what do you think?" he asked loudly. "Is my cross offending anyone?" A pause followed. Then, an elderly woman with curly gray hair, sitting with a cup of herbal tea, spoke up. "Wear whatever you want, dear. This is America, isn't it?" The man in the plaid shirt added, "I fought in Vietnam, so guys like you could wear your crosses. This manager is going too far." Derek turned red, his composure slipping away. "This is my place," he yelled. "You can all leave if you don't like it." Sly turned to face him, his eyes narrowing. "Your place? I thought this was a place for people. Maybe you should listen to them instead of barking orders." From behind the counter came Emily's quiet voice. "Derek, maybe you don't need to. He hasn't done anything wrong." Derek spun around to face her. "Shut up. Do you want to get fired?" Sly raised his hand, stopping him. "Don't yell at her. If you want to deal with me, deal with me. But explain one thing. Why are you so afraid of this?" He touched the cross with his fingers. "It's just a piece of metal. Or maybe it's not about that, maybe it's about you." Derek froze, his lips pressing into a thin line. The cafe was so quiet you could hear the hum of a coffee machine. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Sly stood calmly, but his presence filled the room, not with aggression, but with a quiet strength that words couldn't explain. The silence in Brewhaven was almost palpable, like the air before storm. Sylvester Stallone stood before Derek, his broad figure in a denim jacket seeming as immovable as a rock. Derek, though trying to maintain a facade, looked smaller under Sly's watchful gaze. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but no support came from Emily or anyone else on staff. The people at the tables, elderly men in worn caps and women with faded purses, watched him with a mix of disapproval and curiosity. In the corner of the cafe, an old radio softly hummed, broadcasting snippets of the weather forecast. Windy, possible rain by evening. The smell of coffee mingled with the faint scent of wet asphalt drifting in from the open door. "So what's the deal, Derek?" Sly repeated calmly, his voice low but cutting through the noise. "Why are you afraid of this cross? Or maybe you're afraid of what it represents." Derek exhaled sharply, his hands clenching into fists. "I'm not afraid of anything," he shot back. "It's about order. We've got customers with all kinds of views, and I don't want anyone complaining because of you." Sly nodded, as if considering the words. He slowly scanned the room. "Anyone want to complain?" he asked, addressing everyone. "If my cross bothers you, speak up. I'll listen." An elderly man in a plaid shirt, the same one who mentioned Vietnam, stood up from his chair. His hands trembled with age, but his voice was firm. "I'm Jim. I served in '68. I don't care what you wear, a cross, a star, or even an Elvis medallion, as long as you're a decent human being. And you," he nodded at Derek, "you're acting like we're in the army and you're the sergeant. Relax." A woman with herbal tea, named Marge, added, "I've been coming here every Tuesday for 5 years. Never saw anyone complain about someone's faith. You're your own enemy, Derek." Sly turned back to Derek, his eyes gleaming. "So, looks like no one's complaining. So what's the problem?" Derek gritted his teeth, his face reddening with anger. "The problem is you. You came in here, caused a scene, turned everyone against me. I keep order here, and you—" "I just want a coffee," Sly interrupted, his voice calm, but with a weight to it. "You started all this. Maybe you should ask yourself why you're reacting this way. It's not about the cross, is it?" Emily, who had been standing off to the side, suddenly spoke up softly. "He's afraid of the corporate office." Derek spun to face her, his eyes flashing. "What did you say?" Emily flinched, but didn't back down. You said it last week, that if someone files a complaint about religion or politics, they'll check on us. You're afraid of losing your job. A silence fell. Derek looked as though he'd been struck. Sly tilted his head, studying the manager closely. So that's what it is, he said quietly. You're not afraid of me. You're afraid of the higher-ups. And instead of talking to people, you push them away. Derek stepped back, his confidence crumbling like dry cookie crumbs. He rubbed his face, trying to regain his composure. You don't understand, he muttered. We've had incidents. Last year, one customer yelled at another over a political t-shirt. We had to call the police. I don't want that happening again. Sly nodded, his expression softening. I understand, but banning people from being themselves isn't the answer. You'll just make more enemies. Look around, these people aren't against me. They're against your rules. Jim, the veteran, slammed his fist on the table. Exactly. I come here to relax, not to be checked up on like I'm in school. Marge added, We're all different here, Derek. And that's okay. You don't want us to stop coming, do you? Derek was silent. His gaze dropped to the floor. The tension in the cafe reached its peak, but then something unexpected happened. The door swung open, and a middle-aged woman in a business suit entered the room. Her dark hair was neatly styled, and she held a tablet in her hands. A name tag read Linda Crow, Regional Manager. Everyone froze. Linda scanned the room, her brows raised. What's going on here? She asked, her voice sharp but professional. I got calls from customers saying there's some kind of scandal. Derek jumped up, trying to take control of the situation. Linda, it's just a misunderstanding. This man. He broke our policy and I. What policy? Linda interrupted, her eyes narrowing. I reviewed the rules a month ago. There's nothing about religious symbols. Derek froze, his face turning pale. Sly smiled at the corner of his lips, but stayed silent. Emily quietly added, He made it up himself, said it was safer that way. Linda turned to Derek, her gaze cold. You made up a rule that doesn't exist? And caused a scene over it? Derek, we need to talk. Now. She nodded at Sly, as if apologizing. Sorry for the inconvenience. Sir, the company will cover your coffee. Sly waved his hand. No need. I just want people here to feel good. And him, he nodded at Derek, to think about what's more important, rules or people. Linda nodded, her face unreadable. We'll sort this out. Derek, office. Now. Derek, grinding his teeth, followed her to the back room. The door slammed, and the room erupted in conversation. Jim turned to Sly. You did good, kid. Gave him a lesson, without throwing a single punch. Marge smiled. I'd say you're a real hero, just like in those old movies. Sly chuckled, quietly, hoarsely. I'm just an old man who wanted coffee. Emily approached him, holding a cup of espresso. Here, take it. On the house. And thanks for standing up for us. Sly took the cup, feeling the warmth of the ceramic in his hands. Don't thank me. Just do your job and don't be afraid to speak up. He sat by the window, watching the fog outside thicken. The conversations in the room returned to their usual hum about taxes, the weather, life. But something had changed. People glanced at each other, smiling a little warmer. Derek and Linda were still in the back, and no one knew how it would end. Sly took a sip of his espresso, feeling the bitter taste on his tongue. He hadn't won the world, but maybe he'd made this little corner of it a little better. Sylvester Stallone sat by the window of Brewhaven, holding a cup of espresso that had already started to cool. The glass in front of him fogged up from his breath, and beyond it, the fog over Philadelphia thickened, turning the parking lot into a blurry silhouette. Inside the cafe, conversations hummed, but there was a lightness in the air now, as if someone had lifted a heavy burden from the shoulders of everyone present. The old radio in the corner switched from a weather forecast to a quiet melody by Frank Sinatra, My Way, and the familiar notes blended with the scent of coffee and cinnamon, creating an atmosphere that Sly remembered from his childhood in this city. His cross rested on his chest, quietly gleaming in the soft light of the lamps. The door to the storage room, where Derek and Linda had disappeared, remained closed. Muffled voices drifted from within, but no one could make out the words. Emily, standing behind the counter, nervously wiped her hands on her apron, but her eyes no longer held that wary look. She glanced at Sly, with gratitude she didn't dare voice in words. Jim, the veteran in the plaid shirt, finished his coffee, muttering something about young managers taking on too much. Marge, with her herbal tea, flipped through the newspaper, but occasionally smiled in Sly's direction, as if he had become part of her daily routine. Suddenly, the door to the storage room opened. Linda emerged first, her face calm but determined. Behind her trailed Derek, his shoulders slumped, and his eyes avoided meeting anyone's gaze. He looked nothing like the confident manager who had been barking at everyone just an hour ago, but more like a man who had just lost a fight he had started himself. Linda stopped in the middle of the room and raised her hand, drawing everyone's attention. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice clear but not harsh. "I'm Linda Crow, Regional Manager of Brewhaven. I apologize for what you all had to endure today. I've spoken with Derek, and we've come to some conclusions." She looked at Derek, who stood behind her, his hands clasped in front of him. "Derek wants to say something to you," she added. Derek lifted his gaze, his voice trembling, but he forced himself to speak. I overdid it. This thing with the religious symbols. It was my idea. I thought it would be better to avoid problems. But I was wrong. I'm sorry." A silence fell. Jim snorted, but said nothing. Marge put down her newspaper, her eyes narrowed in surprise. Emily, behind the counter, exhaled, as if she had just unloaded a weight from her chest. Sly leaned back in his chair, listening but not interrupting. Linda continued. "Brewhaven doesn't have a policy against personal beliefs or faith. We're here to make people feel at home. Derek is taking a week off to rethink his approach. In the meantime, I'll stay here to sort things out. If you have any complaints or suggestions, come to me." She smiled, restrained but sincere. "And one more thing. Today, coffee is on the house for everyone. Thank you for staying with us." The room erupted in applause. Jim slapped his hand on the table, shouting, "That's how it's done. Finally, the bosses remembered we're people." Marge laughed, her laughter warm like her tea. "Free coffee? I'll be coming here every day now." Emily rushed to the coffee machine, her movements quicker but no longer tense. People started to stand, approach the counter, and joke with each other. The atmosphere had changed, from tense to lively, almost festive. Sly watched this, feeling the warmth from the cup in his hands spread through his whole body. He wasn't looking for fame or gratitude. He just wanted things to be right. But then came a real surprise. Jim approached him, holding an old military dog tag. "Listen, kid," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I don't know who you are, but you reminded me of what I fought for. Take this. I'll feel better if it's with you." Sly took the dog tag, feeling the cold metal in his palm. It was engraved with the name, James R. Kelly, 1968. He looked at Jim, his eyes slightly moist not from tears, but from the deep understanding that comes with age. "Thank you, Jim," he said quietly. "It means a lot." Jim nodded and returned to his table, but his stride had become a little more confident. Marge followed, holding a small paper bag. "This is for me," she said, handing over homemade cinnamon cookies. "My recipe. You've earned it." Sly smiled, his signature crooked grin. "You're spoiling me." He took a bite, crispy, sweet, with a hint of home. Outside, the fog began to lift, and the first rays of the sun broke through the clouds, flooding the cafe with golden light. Emily brought him a fresh espresso, this time with a small foam heart on top. "This is for me," she said, smiling. "You've changed everything here. And for me too." Sly nodded, feeling something bloom in his chest, not pride, but quiet joy. He didn't know if Derek would come back a different man or if Linda would stay for long. But he saw how the people in this cafe had become themselves again, laughing, sharing stories, sticking together. One small step, his calm confidence, had sparked something bigger. He finished his espresso, leaving the cup on the table, and walked outside. The sun was high in the sky, and the air smelled like spring. Sly touched the cross around his neck, then the dog tag in his pocket, and walked toward his pickup truck. Behind him, Brewhaven buzzed with life, not perfect, but real. And that was enough.